I happen to be Jesse with Living Tree Community Foods, and today we are privileged to be with two wonderful family farmers here in Central Oregon. We're just outside of Florence on the Oregon coast, and we're with John and Maria Yager. And they have a beautiful farm here in this most fertile valley. And it's a privilege to be here. We've just spent a couple hours just touring the farm. It is magnificent. And I'd like to start with you, John. John, what is the basic concept, the philosophical ideas behind your farm? For how long have you been growing here on the land?
Well, we bought this farm in 1995, and we set this farm up to be our self-sufficient homestead. But then as we went along, we realized that people wanted the food we grew here, so we started selling more and more food to the public until it's become quite a chore to keep up with the public's demands. And so, but the key here is, regardless, we want food that's high quality, pure, and as much as possible permaculture oriented. Now, a lot of things can't be grown this way. Squash and other things that people want can't be grown as a permaculture crop. But as much as possible, we try to get people convinced to eat very important foods that aren't necessarily foods that are in the American diet. For instance, foods like aronia, sea buckthorn.
Aronia.
Aronia.
That's something far I've never heard about. I've never heard of that.
Aronia is probably the most nutritious, easy to grow food that one can grow in North America.
Okay, and it happens to be a Native American food.
And it's a native food, but it was not popularized here. It was taken to Europe, hybridized, and developed for production there. And then it came back here. There are now quite a large acreage in the Midwest of aronia, but very, very little aronia production in the West. I suspect it will increase, but aronia should be on everyone's home garden selection because it's so easy to grow and can be grown with very little water, especially California. It's something that...
That's an incredible. There are so many plants that are neglected, that have not been, that have been fallen to the wayside, and yet they have so many beneficial properties, so many purposes as far as vitality, antioxidants, and general healing. So, I should think that's one of the joys of the work we do, is bringing back ancient and old-time and Native American plants.
Yeah, I truly believe the centralization of the agricultural development has left behind a lot of plants that are important for our health. And, we can search these out. I mean, people are all over the world searching these plants out, and we just have to really believe in what we're doing and become almost like a missionary with a zeal to get these plants out there.
Wonderful. John, just to give us a basic concept, what are the main crops that you're growing here?
Main crops would be, number one, probably apples, plums, quite a few peaches, pears, and then greens. We love greens ourselves, and we'd like to supply good greens to people. And then squash.
A squash?
We start, here you can't grow outside squash, but by late May we expect to have summer squash ready. And we have squash all summer, and then we go to winter squash. It's not something that I am that high on, but it's something that we fell into, and it's something that's, it's a little complicated to really stick just with the superfoods and make a living
Yeah, yeah,
off the.
yeah.
It's so that we have branched out into things like I won't grow hybrid corn, I won't grow sweet corn, but I do grow just a tints of Native American
Native American
and
corn.
high colored corn
How beautiful.
for the lutein and zeaxanthin in there, because that corn is the most absorbable. The zeaxanthin and lutein are most absorbable in corn of any plant. But corn is not a favorite plant because it robs fertility
Uh-huh.
for the small amount of production you get relative to what it takes. So we try to work with, also berries, a lot of berries. Berries are blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Those are things that we enjoy producing, and Maria loves her strawberries. Come on.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Maria, if I could ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
What does your typical day consist of at this time of year when there's so much abundance and most everything is being harvested? So I would imagine that you start very early in the morning.
When the sun
When the
sun
sun-
shines
when
at
the
9
sun-
o'clock, 9:30,
Okay.
we try to sleep longer because
You
we're
try-
done usually in 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, at 10 o'clock at
Yeah.
night. Okay.
Fridays it's 11, so 11
Okay.
because of market the next day. But every morning is the routine, kind of like have a short meditation, then run open the greenhouses and just be thankful for all the abundance that nature is giving.
Oh, and there's
Yeah,
so
it's
much.
just-
There's such
Sometimes in the beginning
vast
I
variety.
kind of upset so many fruits on the ground,
Uh-huh.
and then a friend said, "Be happy, Maria. My yard has nothing dropping on the ground." So it's kind of a joke.
Okay.
Jenny, a good friend of ours, and she volunteers at the market. She said, "That's a sign, the universe, as much as you give, you also receive a lot."
Oh, that's a beautiful. I'm so glad you said
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And
You
it
always come
seems
back.
to me there is such an abundance here. I was so impressed.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's also impressive. I mean, just now we walked in the barn, and the barn and from hanging from the rafters of the barn, there were magnificent bunches of garlic that was drawn. Great
Yeah.
big magnificent bunches.
Yeah, I
That
just
was
had
so
put them
impressive.
there. Lara was here, so we got help with the garlic because once it rains, but we don't have rain. And I just know when it's July, get them out because I plant them in late October.
In late October.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So when the rain comes, which is
In
very
late
rare,
October?
start splitting and getting muddy.
Right. I
Yeah.
see.
So probably this year I probably planted close to 800 pounds.
Oh, to 800 pounds of
800.
for fresh, you see?
Yeah.
And from 800...
No, harvested.
Harvested.
Oh, you harvested 800
Uh-huh.
pounds?
That's a lot.
And just as far as the actual seed crop, in order to get that 800 pounds, what was the original poundage of the crop?
I
of the
saved
seeds?
30 pounds, 20
From
to
30 pounds,
Yeah.
from 30 pounds of garlic, you
Mhm.
were able to harvest 800 pounds.
Approximately, yeah.
There's so much
And
abundance.
just,
that
it's
is-
a right up with
But
easily.
the thing about
Easy.
garlic is a little tricky
Just-
because
yeah, mhm.
several people have come to me with problems.
Where they're
Garlic needs to be rotated on a long-term basis.
Constantly.
California knows all about it because they got a lot of garlic problems
Yeah.
by not keeping.
Right.
Because once disease, the fungal
Mhm.
problems get into garlic land, you have a hard time.
Mhm.
So we've never planted garlic in the same place.
We keep
We
rotating.
can keep rotating on a long scale basis. And the other thing is that you need to make garlic soil very fertile.
I could
It
understand.
takes a lot of manure.
Okay. It goes without saying, everything here is organic.
Yes.
But you were telling me you are not certified organic. Why is that?
Well, we believe in more than just organic. If you look at the organic certification procedure, now there's nothing wrong with this in some levels, but you can use green sand organically that's mined in Florida. You can use lots of products that aren't sustainable in relation to the earth. We believe in a more biodynamic way of farming in which we use things that are sustainable. Now, there is a real problem with nitrogen in farming in general. you know, most organic farmers used to use fish fertilizer. We know what's happened to that. It's gotten too expensive for organic farmers to use and spread on their fields because fish is declining in the ocean. But the fish plants used to have waste that we used to all get and pelletize and spread on our fields. Now we went to organic chicken manure. None of these things are sustainable. All of these things are based on systems which run non-sustainably. The chicken industry, the fish industries. This causes a real problem for organic farming methods. Because even though we might say we're organic and we're sustainable, unless we can produce all of our fertilizer needs off our farm,
You have to produce.
we can't be really considered sustainable. And there's been a lot of really
Yeah.
inventive, famous farmers and scientists who've worked to create sustainable systems. But for Marie and I, to do this, and the labor involved in collecting and composting all of those, it becomes a choice. We do as much as we can, and then we still buy tons of fertilizer, but it's because it's just two of us for the most part. It's my son helping and my daughter and other people a little bit once in a while. But for the most part, it's Maria and I. And it's not possible for us to do all the labor necessary to make this 100% sustainable. The blessed thing we have here is high fertility soil,
Our soil
which makes
is
it very much easier.
very fertile.
And just why is the soil so exceedingly fertile?
If you look at what the geology of Western Oregon, these estuaries, these low valleys that rose up out of the sea, brought with them those layers of deposits in the sea from years and years of sedimentation, from the streams flowing into the sea. And then on top of that, these streams had giant salmon runs
Giant salmon runs.
that came up these streams, and those fish died and got deposited all across these floodplains.
So deposited
Yeah.
of eons and eons of fish.
Yeah, and so you're getting all these micronutrients from the sea and from the fish
Uh-huh.
over thousands and thousands of years.
It's that when we came here, Jess, it used to flood, and you can see that there's a lot of fishes. It's flooding, so the silt is distributed to the land. So that's part of the fertility.
Oh, how wonderful. How wonderful. I mean, that's so very...
But this is unique. And unfortunately, most of the salmon runs have been so depleted. Now, this run is still a very significant run. It's the one that holds up better because the lake systems protect it. There was at one time a lot of logging on the national forest that impacted the runs, but these runs have held up still 40% of where the traditional levels.
So you happen to have salmon here.
That's right.
Yep.
So it's right in
Yeah,
the stream.
yeah.
What an incredible
And
place.
when they does
spawning.
flood, those salmon lay and die all over the field.
They're here dying, yeah. Some once in a while our dogs, just
Sure,
start
sure.
fishing them out, and we have to stop them because these are, just new life coming out. And amazing, just you have to die, they turn red and just constant.
Well, that's the
spawning.
faith of life. That's
Yeah.
what I always think
Life
of. If it-
continues.
Life continues.
And the salmon
Uh-huh.
come on a dream of their history, and they come back to their historical spawning grounds, and they sacrifice their lives for their young. I mean, this is all faith, this deep faith that life
And they
has.
fertilize the soil, and so we're so connected. Without them,
Yeah.
it's just, the journey of life is continuous. It's so connected. So it's like a big web that, you prick a web, everything's affected.
That's if only the world out there would come to understand or to have some small comprehension of that.
That's right. It's like people have always thought that we get something from nothing.
Yeah.
And that's one of our big problems is that we don't realize that everything we do has an effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can just take, and there's no consequences.
You
Always
can't really
consequences.
blame the people though, but it's a society that they've been reared in that teaches them
It's
this.
a culture. It's a culture.
It's the culture.
Yeah.
And when you think of the source of things, that the government spends money on. When you think about that, and what could be done if those funds were directed towards urban agriculture, for example, towards permaculture. I mean, in every city, you have vast open spaces. In every city, you have public parks. Imagine public parks transforming public parks into permaculture landscape. One thing we have in Berkeley, we have a Martin Luther King High School in Berkeley, and at this Martin Luther King High School, if you're ready for it, can you believe it? They have an edible schoolyard. An edible
Wow.
schoolyard. It really is, and and just to walk through it is a privilege. You have magnificent beds. You have intensive beds of all sorts of greens and of onions, tomatoes, every possible type of vegetable. You have fruit trees. You have plums. You have apricots. You have apples, of course. And it's a vast plot of land. And they actually harvest the various greens and the various fruits, and they serve them to supplement school lunches in the high school.
That's
A
beautiful.
small thing like that. But what a precedent! What a precedent! Because in the high school in the public school and high school that I went, we had a schoolyard. It was paved with cement. It was just cement, and that was it. So to have an edible schoolyard, so the world, even though it's going by leaps and bounds, still there is a progress.
Well, there's
There is
light
progress.
Yeah.
in certain centers. It's like Eugene
Yeah.
is a progressive city.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And
It
in
is.
San Francisco area is a progressive city. It's because a lot of people came like us from the East Coast and
Uh-huh.
other places
Uh-huh.
and saw the hope that's out here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like, if you go back to where you came from, if you go back to where I came from, and if you look at, there's some hope there, but you see the difference. People, my kids have went back east. They say, Dad, we're glad we moved west. Or we're glad you moved west. And you see that. I mean, these areas that you're talking about are centers of optimistic, hopeful people who believe that the world can be changed. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's just, we're always have to fight a little bit of a battle or a significant battle, but at the same time, it's best to fight it where there's a chance to win something.
That makes so much sense to me. How do local people here respond to the foods that you're offering them?
Well, we can't keep up.
You can't keep up.
No. There's more demand than, it's just, our demand is like Marie just delivered yesterday, the Tenacious where you were this morning. A flat of blueberries, a flat of strawberries, and
Yeah.
almost a flat of only you didn't get more raspberries because I couldn't have time to pick them.
And the co-op too.
And the co-op too. But on top of that, the farmer's market, we sell more and more and more.
You sell more. That's what I want to hear. So
Yeah.
people are definitely waking up here, and that's what counts, and that's all that counts.
Now, there's a lot of people that want good food.
Oh,
The biggest thing is there is a certain class of people that just don't know. They just don't know the importance of good food. But there's a lot of people on the West Coast, and in this area in particular, we know. But they came from they retired. It is a retirement, so they came from all over the country, but particularly a lot of them came from California. They know what good food is, and they want it. And so there's a tremendous demand for good food. And there is a lack of farmers here. We've tried to get, but there's an inability of young people to get a hold of land. The land is controlled by people who have money. And it's difficult to everywhere. Look at, I just talked to a guy who started a trucking firm in California, and he was telling me around San Francisco to get, he said an acre of farmland around, I couldn't hardly believe it. He said 400,000 for an acre of farmland around San Francisco.
400,000?
Well, that's what
But of course, it's not surprising because if that's in the Greater Bay Area.
yeah, that was in the greater.
Yeah. It's in San
Yeah,
Francisco.
he lived in San
Oh,
Francisco.
and that,
And he was he had
moved
a
up
virtual trucking price, pretty smart young man. And but he didn't want to live so far out as this because he's I don't know, it's hard to get farming when you're
Yeah.
not. This
Right
isn't
now,
very
right?
far out, and even if you're in the Willamette Valley, if you're on the side of the Willamette Valley, it takes quite a while to get to the hospital. He wanted somewhere where his wife would be close to the hospital. But The key here is it's hard for young people to get their hands on land or suitable land.
Suitable land.
You look at the situation in California border. If you go to New Mexico, if you go to any, the buying of land is only half the problem. Securing of water is the second half of the
Oh,
problem.
of course, especially now.
Yeah, and so you just can't have a piece of land. You have to have the water with it, and the water rights.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, when we looked around the West, the reason we ended up in Oregon is because this was a place we could get water and land cheaper than you could in New Mexico, Colorado, or other states.
That's so helpful indeed. What do you see as the prospects for an awakening of people here at the grassroots level? That's already happening, it seems to me.
Well, at a certain level in your business, I think it is, but overall, we have a cooperative in the Philippines too. And I basically think that it's very difficult for people to see the way, I mean, you're in touch with people through your business that are awake, that have, but on the, in dealing with peasant people in the Philippines, in dealing with poor people here, we have a long way to go to reach them. These people have been down and out for so long that it's just, we invested quite a bit of effort in planting mango orchards and other orchards and land we purchased for the people in the Philippines, and building a longhouse for to help them make money off of some of the ecotourists. But we ran into problems with government, with all sorts of people wanting to feed off of projects that we started without having the proper. And I think this is general. I think that we're in a situation where there's a minority of awakening people, but so many people, even if they're conscious of what's going on, a lot more are conscious because of the media, but they aren't cognizant of the total effort it takes to change. It's just like farming. Why are farmers having to mechanize more and more things that they wouldn't necessarily, or why are they choosing to do this? In some cases, driven by the inability to get laborers to do the work. Because farming is very laborious. It doesn't, it's not highly regarded. So the pay in, farm laborers is not like in Japan, where farming is highly regarded and subsidized by the government. I personally have seen a lot of really cognizant, intelligent young people come through here, but I know that they're the minority. They're the minority still. The awakening that's going on is, if we were truly awakening as a society, we'd be changing a lot faster.
But then something is stirring out there, because the latest headlines in the Wall Street Journal tell me McDonald's food sales happen to be declining at 5% per annum. It's actually falling. Fast food in general is declining here in this country. And that, I think, is one hopeful sign. And there are so many people who are, there are very, very powerful forces out there that are getting people to wake up. Obesity is one of them. The statistics on obesity are phenomenal. 70% of Americans are overweight, and of that 70%, half are obese. And many of those, obesity is just the beginning towards even more serious things. So those people are being forced to wake up.
That's right. You're right there.
No question about that at all. So that's why, I just see this. When I walk in the streets of Berkeley in the early morning, And I've never heard, I hear chickens clucking in people's backyards. And this is new, only within the last 5 years or so. People are putting chickens, people are also digging up their front yards
And putting gardens.
backyards and planting tomatoes, lettuce, celery, eggplant, and
Well, this is
whatever.
happening all over
This
the
is
country.
happening,
Yeah.
so people sense this intuitively at the grassroots level.
Yeah, it's always the grassroots that
Always
can
at grassroots.
make the change.
Right.
Yeah.
But as Abraham Lincoln said, what better or equal hope do we have in the world than the wisdom of the plain people of this country? It's the example that counts. And the example that we set for others means more and counts for more than we know.
That's right.
I agree with
That's
you.
very
Yeah.
important, and that's the important thing is not what we do, but how we go about doing it.
Exactly.
And it's just important that people know it can be done. And that's been, I've seen that. That's one of the big things that's happened is that people, when they start being successful at growing things, were first instigated by somebody else doing it, and then they suddenly they just become so enthralled and happy because they realize this is not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But we've lost. Just think about it. We've lost such touch with the earth that we even have to think about it because what was it back at the turn of the century? Most people, 90% of people in the country were farmers. Or
That's
lived
right.
out-
90% at the turn. You're
Yeah.
right. You're so right.
And so we've lost in this little bit of time. We've lost touch with the earth that much.
Yeah.
Not that they were the proper farmers, but they were farmers, and so they were humbled all the time, because to touch the earth humbles us
Yes.
and keeps
yes.
us humble.
Yes, but it's also, you also see a vast, great return. A return because it's always a cycle, it's always a spiral. You see a return at a higher level. Permaculture, biodynamic agriculture are at a much higher level than anything that was here before. So you do have a return at the highest level,
Right.
and it's a level of far greater consciousness of more of the entirety of what's going on, of life forces, of the entire cosmos and so forth, and as you have in biodynamics. So you have a great return. It's happening, of course, in fits and starts, here, there, and everywhere, but it's definitely growing, and that gives us hope. There's so
There's
much
hope.
life at the grassroots level
Yeah.
of this country.
Sparks here, there, sparks all over, and one day that all the sparks will unite to be big.
A great healing, a
Yeah.
restoration that has
Yeah.
to come.
We just do what we can, wherever we are, just a little bit of this.
And everybody
Yeah,
does
everyone
what they
doing-
can.
Everyone does what they can,
Yeah,
as much as they can.
it'll help, yeah,
It matters so much.
it
Well,
does.
thank you so much indeed, John and Maria.
You're welcome.
It has been a privilege indeed to be here. I'm so inspired. Thank you.
Thank you too.
You're welcome.
Yeah.